Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila. This is the Forbes Books Podcast. And earlier this year, the New York Times published an article titled Selling Houses While Black. It included two very disturbing stats. One, about 6% of real estate agents and brokers in the U.S. are black. And two, white real estate agents make almost 3 times as much as their black peers. Well, my guest this week wants to change that. His name is T. Dallas Smith. He's the founder of one of the largest black-owned commercial real estate firms in the country, and he's made it his mission in life to change the status quo. This spring, he's releasing the book, In the Black, Changing the Dominant Narrative in the Commercial Real Estate Industry, where he shares his experience as a young black man trying to break into commercial real estate in the 1980s and lays the groundwork for the next generation. Dallas, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful, Joe. It's great to have you on this call today.
Yeah, me too, Dallas. And so I set the scene there in the open. Only 6% of real estate agents and brokers in this country are black. And you know there was that hashtag Oscars So White in 2015, but how about hashtag real estate so white? What's going on here?
It's a couple of things, Joe. Great question. So I think it's two main things. One is a lack of exposure, and the other is racism. Just clear, to cut it down, I think it's down to those two things. I'll talk about the exposure. A lot of people in this business they're the siblings, they're the cousins, they're the relatives of other people who've been in the business for years. So names like Trump, it's Trump family or cousins or Hines. You'll find that there's generations who've been in that business. So it tends to be within the family or very close friends, sort of the fraternal kind of thing. Then you've got just, I'm not going to bring you into the game kind of thing. The door's closed. It's a secret society kind of mentality. I was the first black broker at Cushman & Wakefield in Georgia in 1989, got into the business in 1982. But ultimately, when I got hired by Bill Bugg, who I think is a great man, a wonderful man, right up front, he said, Dallas, people ask me all the time why we don't have any black brokers at Cushman & Wakefield. He said, I tend to tell them one of two things. One is we can't find any qualified. The second is we don't want any.
Jeez.
He put his arm around my shoulder. He said, we really don't want any, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be the first. But depending on how you do, will determine whether it's a second, third, or fourth.
Wow.
So those two things for me break down to two things. One, racism. We don't want any, okay? The other is we can't find any. Lack of exposure on their side and lack of exposure of our side. So I'm hell-bent on people knowing about this commercial real estate thing. And, I like to refer to myself as a Pied Piper of commercial real estate. Before they put me on the box, I'm going to make sure everybody knows about this thing called commercial real estate. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, In the Black.
No pressure on you, Dallas, when your boss says to you, like, if you don't work out, we're probably just not going to hire more black dudes. I mean, did you feel the weight of it, or were you sort of like in a daze? You're like, I don't know, how am I going to get through this?
It was funny. I was really in a daze at that point, and I think God just allowed me to just hear what I heard. And let me tell you what I heard, Joe. What I heard was, I'm about to get this job. That's what I heard.
It's the optimist in you came out, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, this guy's about to hire me. So that's what I heard. And literally, and I was 26 years old when that happened. The weight of that statement probably really didn't hit me till I was probably 40.
Wow. And
it hit me in a way that, okay, he said that to a 26-year-old and who I could have ruined it for everybody, if I was horrible. But I was like, why wouldn't you if Dallas did a horrible job, just give the next guy another chance? But that was not the statement. And in my book, I talk about this poem that I wrote. And the title of this poem is The Tears of Black Folk. And one of the bullet points about the tears of black folks was not being accepted individually, but only as a whole. Like you are it for the entire race, wow. Regardless of what you do. If you're playing tennis and you're Serena and Venus, if you're playing golf, you're Tiger, it's like the entire weight is on the race. I happened to watch something last night about Jesse Owens, who won the Olympic 4 gold medals during the Nazi regime. And the entire race was just so happy that he won. And it was sort of like if he'd have lost, we would have lost as well. And it's just a different weight. It's not like just Jesse won, that's wonderful. No, it was the weight. And so that's sort of one of those things like if a white ball player hits a home run, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's not the weight of the, you're going to go back to work tomorrow. You'll be fine. But
Yeah.
for us, it's kind of like if he lost, we got to go back to work, and we got to hear how whoever lost. The entire race is put upon the shoulders of one person. And whether it's business or whatever, it's the fact.
Yeah. And you gave this speech at the Atlanta Commercial Board of Realtors. I'm sure that was a rager right before Christmas, where you said, what they tell you are the three most important things about real estate: location, location, location. My history has shown me one thing. It's not about location, but complexion, complexion, complexion. Does everyone know about this problem now? I read the stat at the top, but are people recognizing the problem?
It's funny. People are at an interesting place. I've been in the business for a very long time, and for 41 years, and I've been in this town for a very long time. So I know a lot. When you talk about the percentages of particularly white male, I know all these guys, particularly all the senior guys. I know them, and they know me. We've been around a very long time. And we're all getting at a very interesting place in our life. I'm 60 years old now. And so at a certain point, you kind of reflect on your life, and you go, if you've been either absent in the communication, in that conversation, you've been absent, or you've been present, and this. And I've seen a lot of them as they're getting older, realizing the same thing that I realize, and that is, Joe, at the end of the day, all the knowledge that I've gained over these years will do me absolutely no good in the grave if I hadn't passed it on. And so my whole thing, what I'm telling everybody at this point, we need to leave the world empty. It will do you absolutely no good to take it to the grave with you. And let's leave it to the next generation. And that's what we're calling the wisdom circle. So I'm creating this thing called the wisdom circle, where we're having, series of fireside chats with people who I value their opinion in the industry in front of younger people. And then when we're also taking people's homes and having fireside chats, because I want these new people to see this person's house, how this person lives, and go, get motivated. Like, oh my God, commercial real estate did this for you? Okay. All right. Let me really pay attention and listen to what you have to say.
Wow. And speaking of the next generation, over the summer, you named Leonte Benton president of the T. Dallas Smith Company. And from what I understand, he was an intern of yours in the company. So tell me about his story.
So Leonte is the first male in this family to graduate from college. The first male in his family not to be a convicted felon. I met him as a sophomore. He came to me, wanted to get in the commercial real estate business. And I was always the guy, Joe, that I don't care where, if you were a black person trying to get a job with one of the big shops, they would ask you in interviews, have you talked to Dallas Smith yet? And it used to drive me crazy. People would call me, and I would always tell them the same thing. Get your license and we'll talk. I did that as a way of getting rid of people, because I knew I told that to 50 people and nobody ever came back.
Wow.
And so that was my way of getting rid of people, because having a brokerage firm really wasn't what I was going to do. So I met Leonte and did the exact same thing with him. Well, get your license and we'll talk. 3 weeks later, this kid comes back with his license. And now I'm going, what the hell am I going to do with this kid?
I can't blow this guy off now.
I can't, but I tried. For 2 weeks, I tried. I had him doing the most ridiculous things possible. I had him walking my dog, washing my car, getting my lunch, getting coffee. Well, for 2 weeks, he never said, and everything was always yes, and he took care of the problem. But on this one particular day, I had this epiphany. I asked Leonte, can you put the water up for somebody from UPS was delivering this water. Can you put the water up for me? Yes, sir. Everything was yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's on his hands and knees putting this thing on the bottom cabinet. And I have this epiphany. It's like God said, Dallas, that was you when you were trying to get in the real estate business. But there was nobody who looked like you. You could help this kid unlike anybody could help you. And it was literally at that moment, at that time, Joe, I realized what my entire life had been about, why I'd gone through all the things I'd gone through, was to be able to help a kid just like this. And so he started with me. He was my day one. He's in my phone as Leonte Day One Benton. And within 2 weeks of that time, God told me to train him up as a son, because this will be the one who will run your business when you turn 60.
Wow.
And so I turned 60 in August of last year, and we had a big ceremony where we had a baton, handing over the baton event. It was beautiful, and it was a very emotional day, because it was 16 years later when God had made that statement to me, and here it was happening. So it was just a beautiful thing. He's a young man. He's 38 years old, but he's wise beyond his years. I tell him he's been here before. He's 38. He ought to be really technology savvy, and he's not. I think I'm more savvy than he is in technology, but he's got an old spirit, but very smart guy. Crosses the field with everybody. He's got friends from. I'll give you one example to tell you how broad this guy's relationships are. He asked, particularly on a Valentine's Day that was coming up, he and his wife was going out with some other friends to do some target shooting at a friend's house. He invited me and my wife to come out. I said, sure. He gave me the address. I was driving out. And you know it's far when when Wade says you have arrived and you're in the middle of nowhere. And so we're in the middle of nowhere. You have arrived. I'm driving around trying to find. I see this one place with a Confederate flag. I say, no, that can't be it. So I go around. I circle around. I find a place. I say, hey, Leonte, I can't find that place. He said, just tell me where you are. I'll have my friend come get me. The friend comes and get me. He's a sheriff at this particular area. Where does he drive us back to? Where the place where the Confederate flag was.
Yeah.
This guy's a friend of Leonte's. And it was an awesome time, by the way. And the guy was a hell of a shooter, a marksman. It was pistol holsters training. So coming out, how to draw out of your pistol and shoot a target. And this guy was spot on. But it's one of those valuable lessons that I said to him early on. Never judge a book by its cover. Really get to know the interior of people, not the exterior. And he has taken that to a PhD level. He has friends all across every ilk. From the richest, some of the poorest, from black, white, Asian, Hispanic, you name it. He is one to watch for sure.
Wow. Your book's good, Dallas, but man, I think that Leonte book might be a little better.
No doubt. We'll make sure we make that happen as well.
Oh man, what a great story. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious about in terms of you're so forward thinking now, but have you always been like this? Have you always felt like the next generation's important? I mean, you mentioned you're in your 60s already. Did you always have this mindset, or were you just early on where you're just like we all are, I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to do the best I can for my own thing. But when did this kind of mindset shift happen in your brain?
It really wasn't until this thing happened with Leonte, to be quite frank. I tell people I've been in this business for 41 years, but I've only been in my calling for the last 16.
Wow.
And so that's the way I describe it, because I was doing real estate, love real estate, but where I am now in my life in terms of what really excites me and gets my juices flowing is seeing when these young people that we bring in do their first deal. It's nothing like it. I mean, I still remember my very first deal. I made $300. Joe, you'd have thought I made $3 million. and the issue wasn't the amount. It was I was able to do this with my mouthpiece, treating somebody how you want to be treated. I had no investment in it. It was just a conversation, and boom, I was able to create this money kind of out of thin air. When the checks start getting bigger, it's even better. But to see people have that first one is really exciting time. And we have a bell in our office. It's a ship's bell. Whenever the check comes in, somebody's done their first deal, they ring that bell. Wow. And we always capture it on video, and it's always just an exciting time. And I want people to remember that very first time and what they did to be able to make that happen. And, the deals will get larger, they'll get more complex, but the gist of it is at the end of the day, you are a trusted advisor, and you need to keep the client first in all aspects of that. And so Leonte's taken it to the next level, and we got so many other people in our office who are just doing a wonderful job. I'm so excited about the future for T. Dallas Smith & Company.
I feel like you have an irrational love for commercial real estate. I mean, you are so effusive about it. You love this. So tell me why. Like, for someone like me who has no idea how commercial real estate works, or someone who's listening to this, like how the sausage is made, why do you love commercial real estate so much?
At the end of the day, we think about on the residential side, right? You live somewhere. You lay your head down somewhere. For office, industrial, land, I mean, we create a home for businesses. This is a place where you spend more time particularly with your coworkers than you typically do with your family. Mm-hmm. The camaraderie that exists in this particular place, where you are, it impacts. I mean, we're economic engines to any community. And an office comes into town and, they put 20 bodies in that little small office in a small town. That's a big deal. Or if you're in a big city and, somebody's coming in with 2,000 new employees, you've created a whole new district that spills off into retail, to residential. You are impacting where people live. And so when you realize that, particularly commercial real estate brokers, we are the economic drivers in this industry. 2 years ago, in 2021, the top producers in the Atlanta Commercial Board of Realtors, production was $46.7 billion. 576 brokers.
Whoa.
Think about that. I tell people, the politicians and everybody else get credit for it, at the ribbon cuttings and all that kind of stuff. You never see the broker who really did the deal. And I think we're fine with that because they don't share in our commissions. So I think we're okay with that. But, it would be a problem if they shared in our commissions. But the reality, these deals are being done by brokers that you've never heard of, names you've never seen. I mean, people that if you walk past the street, you wouldn't know that this guy just made $5 million off this transaction. Why? Because he's in a pair of khakis and a golf shirt. Maybe driving a Ford F50, one F50 or whatever, F-150. Those are the guys and gals who are really moving the economy for this world, for the United States, for sure.
People know I'm not a big fan of going back and discussing the pandemic, but I think it's important for our conversation because during the pandemic, there was this sort of feeling that commercial real estate was dead. That people weren't going to go back to the office. People weren't going to shop the way they used to shop. If you don't mind, take us back to those early days. Obviously you're a nonstop optimism machine, but during those early days were you like, oh, damn, I'm screwed?
Couple of things. God has just really blessed us because most of our clients, I'd say 80% of our clients were clients who did extremely well during the pandemic. For instance, FedEx is a client that we do a lot of work for. Everybody's sitting at home, pressing that button at Amazon, getting something delivered to their house. Who was delivering it? It was FedEx. Right. AT&T is a client. Everybody's using, more telecommunications now because we're at home using, Zoom and Teams and every other service that you can use. We were very fortunate, and we couldn't have made this. We couldn't have planned this if we had thought. But literally, at the end of the day, Microsoft, what are we doing? Everybody's at home using Teams. So they were growing like gangbusters. So it's just a matter of being blessed. My dad used to say it's better to be lucky than good. We just got really fortunate. I like to say we've been blessed, not just lucky, but we have really, truly been blessed. During that time, most of our clients really did a wonderful job, did record numbers during COVID. In fact, we did the largest deal in the United States during COVID, which was Microsoft, 523,000 square feet in Midtown Atlanta. So you couldn't have scripted this, Joe, the way that it worked out. But I'm telling you, without a doubt, we have been blessed beyond measure, and God continues to bless us. I've lost both parents. My dad died 2010. My mother died 2020. And I'm convinced I've got two angels who intercedes on my behalf on a regular basis. And because a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense that it worked out, but it doesn't, but it does. Because all I've done from day one is to do what God's called me to do. When I started this business, and when he, used Leonte really as a catalyst, as my muse, to find the thing that I was supposed to do since I was born.
Wow. So circling back to my original question, it didn't seem like the pandemic bothered you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All that much.
Not at all. I mean, I really like this. I hate to say it, but I'm very careful not to say that around a lot of people because I know the pandemic hurt a lot of people. But it was literally, I looked at our roster of clients, and they were clients who were doing extremely well. Within let's say if we had 100 clients, 80 of them were doing extremely well. 20 may have taken a hit. But, the 80 carried us and continue to carry us in a way that we had our most productive year ever was 2020.
Wow, that is so cool. And you are from Atlanta, and I know we've spoken a couple times before this about our sort of our mutual hatred of each other's baseball clubs. You're a Braves fan, and I'm a Mets fan.
Yes, indeed.
But the one thing that I find that's amazing about Atlanta is that, and again, this is all anecdotal, it is a breeding ground for Black business owners. I had a podcast where I had C. David Moody, who owns the largest African-American owned construction company. You're in Atlanta. What is it? What is it in the water there that is able to have this impact on the fact that you guys can step into that role and then have this ripple effect for generations to come?
I will take you back a little bit. So go back mid-'60s. Alabama and the city of Atlanta, Birmingham to be specific, and Atlanta are about the same place, almost equal. Then, Atlanta does this airport, this regional airport that became a national, international airport. But during that time, this was also sort of what separated Atlanta from Birmingham was simply the tragedy that happened around issues of race. So when Bull Connor in Birmingham was sicking dogs and water hose on black folks, Atlanta had a group of black leaders and white leaders that started a thing they called the Action Forum. And the leaders of these two communities dealt with issues of race behind closed doors and from the standpoint what was going to be best for the city. And Herman Russell, who was a mentor of mine, and C.D. Moody, who started H.J. Russell and Company and grew it to the largest African-American construction company at the time, was the guy that we sat at the feet of and learned from. And what he was able to do, similar to what I described with Leonte, he had the ability to talk to people from all walks of life. And Ivan Allen coined the phrase, Atlanta, the city too busy to hate. So when that became sort of our mantra, we kind of moved into that space. And so it was nothing to see a black leader in this town. In fact, we've had black mayors in this city since Maynard Jackson. Mm-hmm. So we've seen leaders and titans of business. There's a guy named T.M. Alexander who owned a real estate company, an insurance company, who had a house in my old neighborhood called a house on the hill that was, a mansion of all elk back in the day. And there's one street called Hunter Street, which is now MLK. On Hunter Street was where all the black folks who had money. Hank Aaron lives as a baseball person. Hank Aaron lived on Hunter Street, Joe.
Okay.
In fact, after a game, and I grew up 5 blocks from this area, my dad would say, hey, let's go, let's try to time it and see when Hank's getting home. And we'd drive around, you see Hank Aaron getting out of his car, going into his garage. It was a big deal. And this was in my old neighborhood. So I grew up seeing these things. And so the thing back about being exposure, if you see it, it's possible. It's possible. And in this city of Atlanta, we see it every day. And so, the joke has been, Atlanta is the real Wakanda. So you can see, black people at all levels doing all types of things from banking to medicine to law to real estate. They're in every industry here in this city. In fact, I say if you're black and you can't be successful in Atlanta, you're really doing something wrong.
I love that.
Something's wrong. Yeah,
I love. It's so funny. Dallas, over the past year, I built my first house, first time homeowner, and my whole life, awesome. I always thank you very much. It sucks, but it's great, but it's also very stressful, as you know. Yeah,
you're living at Home Depot now every weekend, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Home Depot and Lowe's are pretty much my normal stops. But the one thing I've noticed from being a lifelong renter to now working with small businesses, because I'm a homeowner, because before, when you're a renter, you call up the landlord, they send over someone. Now I've realized working with small businesses, and my whole life, I was like, man, I feel bad for the little guy. They're always struggling. There's the Walmart's coming to town, Costco's coming to town to take their business, and I've always felt bad. But now, dealing with small businesses on a almost regular basis, which I don't want to say, I realized why a lot of small businesses fail. Yes. They suck at small business. And like you said, your point about if you're a black business owner in Atlanta, why do you think small business owners, no matter what color, why do you think a lot of them fail? And this is my perspective. I feel like they're good at what they do, but their soft skills are just awful. They don't know how to return a call, deal with people. What's going on there?
So I think there's a couple of things. Well, a very good friend of mine by the name of Cassius Butts used to be the SBA regional director for this Region 4. And he gave me this stat, and it was something like it's less than 8%, I want to say, businesses make it to 5 years in business.
Wow.
And I think a couple of things happen. One is that you have because I went through this phase, I'm going to tell you, nobody can do it like me. I'm the only one who can do this. Mm-hmm. So you have a small business where you have a business, but you really don't have a business. You just own a job. So because you own a job, you're the only one that can do something. So if you take a day off, you're not doing any business. And so we're afraid to let the machine go because we're really good at this one thing. But the idea of training up somebody behind us, the scaling, is just a foreign concept to us. Mm. So now we overdo it. Regardless of what you can do, let's say you typically for this widget job that you did 5 widgets a day. Now your business is going, you're really good. Now you're doing 10. I mean, you're trying to do it, but you're not doing a good job. So now it's to your point, it's starting to fail. You're not doing it the way that you were when you were just had that one customer. When Joe was your sole customer, you were there all the time, every time. But now you've got more people and that to take care of, and you hadn't trained anybody behind you to really do it as well as you. And so I think fundamentally most small businesses have an issue with scaling, letting go of the reins of saying, I am the only one who can do X. Because I had to go through that same thing. Thank God I got over it. Thank God I got over it.
Well, I'm sure Leonte's glad too, because he probably would never be the president if you didn't get over it. You're going to be long gone.
And we've got people who are much better at doing things than I ever did. And I'm just great. I've got my business partner, Dexter Warrior, who handles all the money at the office. That's a weird thing. Another thing, a lot of people want to give up the purse strings. I gave up the purse strings because I knew he would be better at it than me. I'll give you a perfect example. Every job that was here, I used to do.
Right.
And I remember one day I paid the bills, but I was like, oh my God, I'm forgetting something. I forgot, but I could not remember what it was. So I pick up the phone to make a call, and there's no dial tone. I said, I forgot to pay the phone bill. That's it. Certain things you just need to fire yourself from. So I fired myself from that. I fired myself from keeping my own calendar. I had a real big faux pas. I was going to dinner, me and Dexter heading to dinner to Nashville to have dinner with a client, and I get a call midway. I'm in Chattanooga, and the call is from Georgia State University, and the call said this: Dallas, we can't wait for you to MC the event tonight. Do you need anything?
Oh, God.
I said, I said, now what time did you want me to be there? If you can be here at 6 o'clock sharp, that'd be great. Now, mind you, Joe, it's about 3:30.
And let me guess, it was not on your calendar.
It was not on my calendar. And so that day, I fired myself from keeping my calendar because I was I got in with just enough time to hit the stage where in front of me, Joe, was a teleprompter with a script of about 30 pages that I'm seeing for the very first time. I got through it, but when the thing was finished, I was physically ill. I went home, laid down. I stayed in the bed for 2 days. And I said, I'm never going to do that again. So I used to be one of those guys, I had close friends who, once they kind of went through the ranks, they had me call their secretaries to set up. And that used to kind of piss me off, like, wow, man, the guy's too big now. He can't call me back. I have to apologize to all those folks because now I understand. I had to fire myself from that. So at a certain point, if you're going to continue to grow, there are going to be positions within your company that you need to fire yourself for.
That's awesome. And lastly, let's talk about the T. Dallas Smith secret sauce.
Yes.
Because I remember reading something that you said your old boss used to say, you can't buy real estate over the phone. You've got to walk it.
Yes.
You've got to see it. Personal interactions, as you know, Dallas, have kind of gone the way of the dodo bird. We're all in this text and email world where people expect everything to get done on a few keystrokes.
Yes.
How important is that personal connection? Because, hey, listen, you're not the only author on this call here, Dallas. I just wrote a book called Good Listen about the importance of conversation. So
I love it.
Talk to me about why that personal connection and being able to be face-to-face and connect with people. Has that been part of your special sauce?
It's everything. I tell people, I had a young guy in my office who we were done a deal. We were waiting on something to come. He was supposed to follow up. I said, have you talked to the person? Oh, they hadn't gotten back to me. Have you talked to the person? Hadn't gotten back to the company. Then I said, okay, help me understand. When you call them, what do they say? Oh, no, I hadn't called them. I've been sending them text messages and emails. Oh, boy. I said, please grab that pen over there, and I want you to write this on the wall for me. And I had him write on the wall. You cannot do real estate or build relationships, meaningful relationships, via tweets, texts, or email. Pick up the damn phone. Build relationships, and build relationships before you need them. You need to endear people, do the same things you would want them to do for you. It's back to the old golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. And it's very important for me. I've got clients who they're not just clients, they're family, friends. They know my family, I know their family. We vacation together. Herman Russell was a cold call. This is the best way I can describe it. He was a cold call for me when I was at Cushman Wakefield. When Herman Russell died in 2014, I was the only non-family pallbearer at the funeral.
Wow.
They say, okay, what happened in those 25 years? We built a real relationship. And I think it's very important at the end of the day, people are going to do business, number one, with people they like, but you have to be proficient in what you do. You got to be the best at what you do. So that's continual growth. We have a saying around here, stay green enough to grow. The minute I think I'm the expert of everything, I know everything, you need to put me in the box, Joe. Take me out. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. That's what always fuels me. And everybody in this office knows that's what we got to be. Because if we're not constantly growing, somebody's nipping at our heels and we will be out of business.
I'm going to steal that. Stay green enough to grow. I like that. Do you mind if I steal that one from you, Dallas?
Hey, no problem. I stole it from a pastor years ago.
He is T. Dallas Smith. His book is In the Black. It is in stores this spring. Dallas, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Joe, you're the best, man. This has been awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.